was no issue with 71 war. We lost what 75 plus aircraft. I'm not sure the exact number, but that's one of the things a former Air Chief Marshal told me. But nobody questioned why we lost so many aircraft at that point in time. But question came up with, I had a chat with a few officers here. I'm sure that they also can't do much about it. Is we won Sindhu, but did we lose the narrative? That's a question I had. In today's generation, the top-down model of communication ensures that the boss speaks first and then it comes down the line. But in today's world where things can change in a few seconds, you look at the press conferences that was held during Operation Sindoor, there was a day's gap, 24 hours, and a lot of things happened in 24 hours. And I remember going to so many news channels for debates, Telugu, Malayalam, English and Hindi during that 4-day period. And I would tell each channel that if you don't telecast in the next 1 hour, don't do it. Because I don't know what will happen in the next 1 hour. And whatever I have said may be gone. It doesn't have any impact. And that is how it's all about communication today. And I felt, and we were having this chat about the DGISPR of Pakistan, how they were handling their press conferences or whatever you call stage conferences, if you want to call it that way. And the question was, when we did Uri and surgical strikes, when we did Pulwama and Balakot, a lot of questions were asked. Did we kill so many people? Did we really bomb Balakot, or did we hit a few trees there? And every one of them, Colonel Rao is here. He's one of the very active people on television you see in Telangana, speaks in a lot of channels. And people like him also try to counter this narrative. Look, we did, but then we can't say everything that we did. And we saw that with the COIS and CDS speaking in various forums. A poor naval attaché somewhere in East Asia got rogered because he went and made a statement about a loss of an aircraft, and everybody latched onto it. The press conferences that were held at two levels. During the operation was at the colonel level, we all know about it, and then there's the MEA official there. But at the later level, the moment it got over, we saw coming to the Air Marshal and of course the DGMO level. What we found that was one-way traffic during the initial days, and then when the final press conferences happened, it was two-way questions. A lot of sense of humor, like Air Marshal Bharti said, oh, you hit Kairana, I didn't know that. Kairana has missiles, I didn't know about it. So the problem with us is, in media, quite often we get asked this question is, fine, you won it, but look at the way Pakistan parroted the entire line that we shot 5 Rafales, 4 Rafales, 7 Rafales. Even Trump says 7, but he didn't say which side lost 7. It took, they saw quite a lot of time. In fact, if you go back and see, they had one French release specifically, which Indian media didn't pick up much, in which they clearly indicated that at 17,000 feet, one of our aircraft got hit by a Pakistani missile, but the pilot managed to bring it back. Now, this statement is again echoed in Air Marshal Bharti's statement, where he said, yes, but we lost none of our pilots. And they all flew back the next day. And that is a loaded statement in that. But my 2 pence thought on this entire thing is about how India needs to change its communication when it comes to the armed forces. We need to have a system, and I've been talking about this, where we need to quickly turn around data. And this happens not just in Army. For example, I spoke at the NTPC Ramagundam, which is a massive thermal power plant, where there was an accident 6 years ago. And typically 3 people died, but the news outside was that 35 died. 35 mar gaye. There was nobody to counter that narrative. By the time the damage was done, they said, no, Delhi se east, our executive director will speak. An executive director was busy with something. By the time he spoke, the damage was done in all the Telugu channels. We had somebody at the local level to react, who was authorized to react to it. And that is not there. And maybe in a structured format of armed forces where you have a chain of command, which comes down saying that you don't speak out of turn. And that is a discipline that you go through. I mean, all of you go through it. You're taught that way. But then when you see the corporate things happening today, is that there's a quick turnaround. There's something happens, you say, yeah, fine, we made a mistake. Sorry, there's something that happened. We'll correct it. But then in the case of an armed forces, and especially in Operation Sindoor, I felt very bad because the Pakistani social media, the Pakistani government, and the international media, which was used by the Pakistan armed forces, of course, the DGISPR, was structured in a way that hit the narrative again and again and again. Even today, we are fighting that narrative, saying, "Nay, we didn't lose any aircraft." I remember I wrote it down at that point in time because I was a kid in 71. I was in school that time. But when Sam Manekshaw was in charge of the 71 war, and he was an excellent communicator. We all know that. He could communicate to anybody for that matter in any language that he wanted. And quite a lot of time he took over the baton to say what happened. And finally, when the surrender happened in Dhaka, somebody asked him, "Are you going there?" He said, "No, I will not go there. Somebody else who's in command will take, and he will accept the surrender." And look at the way that entire picture was taken, that historic picture, which is there in almost every military college that you have today, or even in the defense ministry. That picture stays in our minds forever. But when it came to Operation Sindoor, we did a lot of good stuff. But then we were not able to communicate that properly. Maybe there were a lot of issues in between. We didn't want to say many things, what we did with the Rafale, how did we false tag that? How did we do all that stuff? But next time Pakistan would be better prepared because they know what we did. So you can't speak a lot more things. But I guess down the line, as a communicator, as a person, as a journalist, I always tell myself, maybe we need to change our thought process. Maybe we need to have retired people. I would add a couple of more colonels actually, but they're not free to come down. But I got Colonel Rao to come down. But they are the people who go to the television studios and defend from a defense angle. He was with Sikh Light Infantry earlier. Yes, sir, he commanded that. So he knows what it is like. So they are able to speak the technical language, which I may not be. I speak from a purely journalistic point of view. What we did hit Sargoda, did we hit Jacobabad, what did we do in Kairana Hills, all that stuff. But the problem is that down the line, I think somewhere along the way, the Ministry of Defense, the Government of India needs to work out a structure where there are both official and non-official ways of communicating. Pakistan did more damage on the non-official part of it. They used their social media influencers to a very large extent to falsify the campaign against our country. Even today, as I said, we are still struggling to counter that narrative. And that narrative, ladies and gentlemen, ladies are here, so gentlemen are here, need a relook at that. Maybe Wellington or CDM here in Hyderabad needs to have a course, or maybe already they have one, where they reorient their thoughts as much as the theaterization is being spoken about right now. Thank you very much.